risks of having a large oil spill. The second question would be, are the other social costs of oil, so when we actually burn the oil, are those social costs being internalized? And I suppose, do you care about those social costs or not? Because you could still make an argument that, like, well, the social cost of like carbon is mostly being borne by other people in the world, so maybe I don't care. And then finally, probably the most important question would be, would we ensure that the taxpayer actually receives the benefit? So I think a lot of people would be skeptical, and probably rightly so, that the government would actually run like an efficient, fair auction. Instead, they would probably be concerned that Chevron or ExxonMobil or somebody would come in and lobby and basically bribe politicians and get some sweetheart deal where they get to start drilling off the coast of California and only pay California like 10% of the revenue that they get or something like that. That's just basically shortchanging the government and making out with huge profits for them. So that would really be sort of a key question here, but that's not even like, as far as I can tell in the debate, when you hear this issue around like that sort of question doesn't even really come up very often. Okay. Then the final thing that I think is interesting here in the oil drilling example is that so this is a case where who you assign the property rights to is going to potentially have a big impact on the final allocation of drilling, right? So if we think about like the Coase theorem, it says that as long as we assign property rights to somebody, then parties will bargain over whether or not people are going to engage in the activity that causes the externality, and we will reach a Pareto efficient outcome. So that's potentially true, but whether you end up assigning the property rights to, say, the oil companies versus assigning them to environmentalists is going to have a huge impact on the final outcome here. So, and you can see that actually in the survey responses, which we'll get to in a second here as well. But if you assign the drilling rights to the oil companies, so say to ExxonMobil, it's certain that the environmentalists would not be able to raise the hundreds of billions of dollars that would be necessary to buy those rights, right? So if you assign, you say, okay, ExxonMobil, you own the rights to drill off of California, we just gave you like a $500 billion windfall for no reason at all, but we did that because we believe in the Coase theorem and we want you to come to an efficient outcome. The environmentalists would say, like, well, we would like that not to happen, therefore, we need to raise enough money to buy those rights back from Exxon, but there's no way they're going to be able to raise like $500 billion or $1 trillion. It's just not going to happen. There's also a free rider problem there, right? Because like when the environmentalists are going around basically asking for donations to buy up the rights so that the oil companies can't drill off the coast, like lots of people might think like, especially if you live on the coast or something, right? You might think like, well, I would really like to donate to, I would really like there not to be drilling. And in principle, I would like to donate, but I know that my donation on the margin isn't really going to make a difference in the final outcome, so it's better for me not to donate and hope that everybody else does, and then you just get into basically a free rider problem at that point. On the other hand, you could assign the drilling rights to the environmentalists, and I think it's totally possible that the environmentalists would, potentially turn down like a $500 billion offer from ExxonMobil to buy those rights back so they could develop the oil fields and start drilling. I don't know that it's rational. I mean, I think it's very possible that they would. I personally don't think it would sort of be rational. I suspect that they could probably make better use of $500 billion than preventing coastal oil drilling. Not that I'm not saying that's not like a worthy goal, but you could sort of think about like, well, how much could they buy or how much could they protect if they accepted that and then use the proceeds to do something else like buying up half of Amazon or something like that. So does this difference in final allocations mean that the Coase theorem is failing? The answer to that is no. It doesn't. We said before that all the Coase theorem says that you will come to a Pareto efficient outcome. It doesn't necessarily say that you'll come to the exact same outcome depending on whether you assign the rights to one party versus whether you assign the rights to the other party. And really, the issue here is that the right we're talking about is so valuable here that who you assign it to has a huge impact on whether or not that party can afford to express its preferences. Like, so, the environmentalists only have $500 billion. They're able to express their environmental preferences in the market, and if they don't, then it's very difficult to do so. Okay, so the other thing that I want to talk about here or quickly review is the survey results. So for some reason that's not clear. So in theory, half the people in the class were assigned to take survey A and half were assigned to take survey B. Ideally, I would have liked to just like send out an email where the first half just got a link to survey and the second half got a link to survey B. Unfortunately, like the B courses site is kind of terrible on many dimensions, and that's just one of them. So the best I could do within sort of their the constraints of like how their system is designed was essentially like make two groups and give one group the password to survey and the other to survey. Now, obviously, if you wanted to, you guys could share the passwords with each other, but I don't know what the point of doing that would be. So half of you were randomly assigned to A and half were randomly assigned to B. Now, for reasons that are not clear to me, A had a substantially lower participation rate than B. So I think something like 17 people or 16 people responded to A, and then like 29 responded to B. I'm not quite sure why that was, but it was what it was. So the surveys were broadly similar, but there were sort of like a couple of minor differences between them. And so I think those differences, sort of looking at the effect of those differences on the actual responses, is kind of interesting. So there's sort of, okay, so remember there's three questions. The first question was basically about how much you would be willing to pay for an airbag that reduces risk in your car. The second question was essentially how much you would be willing to accept to engage in a job that's slightly riskier in the sense that you'll be driving more, and driving accidents are like the leading cause of death for people in your age range. And then the third is about this question of like opening up the coastline to drilling. So the differences were essentially that in the first two questions, so the ones that were related to airbags and driving, those of you who answered survey A had actual probabilities attached to like the risk of death, either so basically the risk reduction of death with the airbags or the fatality rate per mile driven in the driving example. And those are loosely based on, I mean, don't interpret them as like exact estimates, but they're not super far off from like reality. And then the second one, if you answered survey B, basically your question was identical except I didn't attach any probability. So at that point it was just like whatever probabilities you thought might be the truth was presumably what you were using to make your decision. And then in the third question, the oil drilling, the difference was essentially whether I asked you willingness to pay versus willingness to accept. So like in one case, I think in survey B, yeah, so in survey A, it was like willingness to accept. So it's like, how much would you need to be paid in order to allow oil drilling? And then in survey B, it was like, how much would you be willing to tax in order to basically obtain the rights from the companies who otherwise are going to drill? So there was like willingness to pay. Okay, so the first thing that's kind of interesting is that the value attached to not driving is higher than the value attached to airbags. So this is basically comparing the answers to question 1 versus the answers to question 2. So the willingness to pay with probably attached, that's from survey A. The average willingness to pay for the airbag was like $350, and the average willingness to accept for driving was like $700. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Without the probabilities attached, the willingness to pay for the airbag was $520 approximately, and willingness to accept was $680. So in both cases, the willingness to accept was for the driving was greater than the willingness to pay for the airbags. And so certainly the $349 versus $700 difference is statistically significant. Even the other one I think is probably significant. The standard deviation was like around 300. So you have about 30 people, so divide by like 6 or so. Yeah, I think it's probably statistically significant at that point. So there's several explanations that are possible to explain why people are sort of willing to accept more to be induced into this additional risk in driving versus willing to pay more. And so to be clear, for those of you who took the survey that had probabilities attached, the probabilities had been done so that the risk of death was essentially exactly the same in both of those scenarios. So it was always something like a 1 in 20,000 increase in the probability of death, or 1 in 20,000 decrease, depending on which way you were looking at it. So there's several possible explanations why that willingness to accept number is higher than the willingness to pay number. First is there might just be a disutility associated with driving, right? So like in the first example, basically you would be doing the exact same thing the whole time, except you have this airbag, which would never deploy, basically be totally irrelevant, except that A, you paid for it, and B, in the event of an accident, it would deploy. But otherwise, it's completely irrelevant, right? In the second scenario, it's like, well, you're driving more on the job, which we're sort of viewing the cost of that as being the additional risk, but you also just might not like driving, you get stuck in traffic. You're being paid for it, so it's not like you're doing it for free or anything like that, but you still might prefer to like be at a desk working rather than like being stuck in traffic or something like that, right? So there could be some additional disutility associated with driving, which is why people need to be paid more for the extra driving risk relative to the decrease in risk from the airbag. The second possibility, though, it could just be a difference between willingness to pay and willingness to accept, right? So we talked about that earlier, that in general, because of loss aversion, I think it's generally the case that sort of people are going to have a lower willingness to pay relative to the willingness to accept, because if you're talking about willingness to pay, it's talking about like reducing your wealth from some level that it currently is at, whereas so that's like a loss, and when you're talking about willingness to accept, you're talking about increasing your wealth from the level it's currently at, so it's not a loss. So if you're loss averse, then willingness to pay is going to tend to be lower. I think it also could be that maybe you think the airbag accidents are like somehow more avoidable. So like the idea here would essentially be that if you think that airbags are primarily going to be deployed or are going to be important in accidents that like single vehicle accidents, which implicitly are ones where you yourself are responsible, then you might not value it that much because you think like, well, I'm a good driver, so I'm not going to get into a single vehicle accident. Instead, the only reason I'll get into an accident is because somebody else hits me. There's definitely like Wobegon effect, like most drivers think they're better than the median driver, which obviously is just plain possible. And potentially there are other explanations as well. The second thing, though, that I think is interesting here is that including the probabilities, in particular for the willingness to pay for the airbags, significantly reduced willingness to pay. And that happened in at least the last year we did it too, which would have been 2012. So Survey A had the probabilities attached, while Survey B didn't, and the probabilities reduced willingness to pay for the airbag by $175. Oh, sure. Yeah, of course. So the probabilities were that buying the airbag would reduce your fatality risk by 1 in 100,000 for each year, and so it's 5 years, so basically 1 in 20,000 total reduction. For willingness to accept, those probabilities didn't make any difference really, or at least no statistically significant difference. So the fact that including the probabilities resulted in like a lower willingness to pay presumably means that people who didn't have the probabilities thought that the risk reduction was bigger than it actually was. And so when faced with the actual probabilities, people were like, oh, that's not that impressive. Like, I'm not willing to pay that much. I should say also there were 3 out of 16, so it's about 20%, who answered $20 on Survey A. For those of you who did that, that implies a very low value of statistical life, which we'll talk about in a couple weeks, of $400,000, which is not consistent with sort of the average BSL in the United States. Only one person answered below $100 on Survey B. So Survey B again was without probabilities attached. With the probabilities attached, people were sort of more willing to answer very low amounts. I should also say, perhaps no surprise, all 4 of these people, 3 there, 1 person there, are all male. I don't know. I mean, young men are well. So I don't know how much of it is like. So you could just say, well, they're sort of risk taking. I mean, there could be a rational reason behind it. Like if you're going to engage in lots of other risky behaviors anyway, then you're probably going to get killed doing something else rather than getting killed in a car accident. But in this case, I'm not sure that that's really the explanation. And then the last question. So the last question again. The huge difference here is whether or not I was asking willingness to pay for oil drilling versus willingness to accept. The other thing is that I actually gave this survey once, like the very first year that I taught the course, and that was before the BP oil spill in the Gulf. And so you really saw a huge effect right after that spill in terms of how people answered the question. So first of all, we take the overall mean. So this is pooling all, I think it was like 49 respondents together and just taking the average and ignoring that some of them were asking or answering willingness to pay question and others were answering willingness to accept. So overall, the mean willingness to pay or accept was like $300,000. This is largely driven by those people who answered $1 million. Now, when you break it down to willingness to pay versus willingness to accept, so the willingness to pay to avoid drilling, the stated willingness to pay is like $36,000. I don't think that is like, I think if people had to actually put their own money on the line, that would not be as high as the answers people are giving. So this is one problem with stated preferences survey. And this is also driven by, I think it was one person who put down $1 million, which, I don't know, maybe somebody in here has $1 million to burn on that, but I'm a little bit doubtful. Now, the mean willingness to accept was almost $500,000. So what happens here is a lot more people put down $1 million for willingness to accept because now you don't have to actually have $1 million in order to carry through on that. Again, though, if you were actually faced with an offer of $1 million, would you sell out? I don't know. It's hard to say. So you can see almost half people are probably putting it down because you're getting close to 500,000. So yeah, 44%. And the willingness to accept group, 44% would require $1 million or more to allow drilling. Now, the thing that's interesting is that the numbers are, I think, almost double from 2009. So 2009 was like before the BP Deepwater Horizon spill. The willingness to accept rose from I think in 2009 the average willingness to accept answer was like 326,000. Now it's like 446,000. So that's an increase, but it's not so dramatic. Where it's really dramatic is the willingness to pay answer. So that answer on average was like $4,200 in 2009, and now it's almost 10 times higher at like 36,000. That being said, it is trending downward. So this is kind of, frankly, it's kind of what I would have expected. Right? So if you look over time, it's like it does have the pattern that here's time and here's willingness to pay in dollars, and then you have the massive oil spill. And it starts out really low. We did have like a huge increase after the oil spill, but then it has been trending downwards. So because it jumped from, it was like 150,000 on average right after the oil spill. It has been coming down, but we still have, this is like 4,200. And here we're currently at like 36,000 or something. So it has not gone all the way back down to the pre-oil spill amount yet. And I don't know, who knows, maybe it won't. Or maybe it would take like decades to go down. But there's definitely sort of like a salience factor at the end. Okay, so then we'll talk about solving for efficient allocations and market equilibriums on Monday.